And here we go, folks. Thank you for joining us for today's program. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. My name is Gary Sarkissian, and I am the Director of Education and Content at CFA Society Boston. We've got a fun and engaging program on the best practices of financial modeling for everyone today, and for the sake of time, I'll keep my comments short, but I would like to take a moment to at least introduce today's speaker. Over the course of 20 years, he has taught finance and business analysis to thousands of business professionals and students in North America, Europe, and Australia. It is our pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Ian Schnoor, Executive Director of the Financial Modeling Institute, or FMI, an organization dedicated to promoting awareness, excellence, and discipline in financial modeling through its accreditation programs. In addition, Ian is founder of the Marquee Group, a leading provider of financial modeling training and consulting. Ian also teaches at Queen's University in Canada and is a recipient of the Instructor of the Year Award in the Master of Finance program at the Smith School of Business. He spent the early part of his career in the world of investment banking at Citigroup and BMO Capital Markets. Ian received his Bachelor's of Commerce honors degree from the University of Manitoba and is a CFA charter holder. Now, before we kick off this presentation, I would like to remind our audience that you are in listen-only mode. If you would like to submit a question to our speaker at any time during the presentation, please use the Q&A button within your Zoom webinar session, and we will try to answer your questions as timely as possible. Also, I would like to add that if any attendees are interested in a deep dive into financial modeling, including building out forecast drivers for the income statement and how to construct all supporting schedules to a company's overall financial statements, we are offering a dedicated financial modeling course from May 31st to June 1st. Stay tuned as we'll share more details at the end of today's program. So without further ado, Ian, welcome to the program, and it's all yours. Please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Awesome. Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, good afternoon if you are in the Eastern time zone. It's so great to be here. I want to start by thanking Gary and Jamie and the rest of CFA Society Boston for having me in today. I'm thrilled to be here for today's session. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get started, and let me get my screen set up. So again, I'm thrilled to be here. I have led this webinar probably 40 or 50 times to different CFA societies all over the world, and really excited to be here to offer it this afternoon or today with CFA Society Boston. Now, a couple housekeeping items before we get started. I know that we are using Zoom webinar mode, but the reason you see me looking over to my right like this is because I can see all of you, and there's a great number of you. It's fantastic to see so many of you. I'm going to try and keep today's session very interactive and engaging because I don't like just sitting here all by myself. So I really want to be able to interact and chat with you guys as we go through the next 90 minutes. I'm actually going to start with a very simple question, and I'd love for you to just raise your hands or your thumb just to let me know, can everyone hear okay? Is the volume, can you see, can you hear okay? Are you ready to go? Just give me a quick thumbs up and excellent. Thank you very much. I see a couple thumbs going up, right? Jared, William, thank you. Anyone else? Just want to make sure we're all set up here. Great and good to go. Fantastic. Also, we'll encourage you to interact using the chat. I will try and keep a few minutes at the end for questions, but I do like to keep it interactive, and we'll try to address questions as they come if they're sort of appropriate or relevant. So I like to interact with the chat, and I've got that open on my screen as well. So feel free to reach out to me. In fact, I actually always like to know where people are coming from. So I know we're running this for CFA Society Boston, but every time I run a program for a CFA Society anywhere, there seems to be people from all over. So I'd love to hear where some of you are from, either if it's a specific area within Boston or outside of Boston. If you want to go to the chat, I'd love to see where you are. So don't be shy. If you want to just toss it in there, it'll come to me very quickly and I will see. You can either go to everyone. Fantastic. Thank you. Got from Dover, Boston, Newton, amazing, Cambridge. So a lot from the Eastern Seaboard area right now. I'm wondering, fantastic. Winchester, Roxbury. Oh, got someone from Montreal. Excellent. Rhode Island. Nice to see you. Nice to have all of you. Fantastic. So quickly here, a couple other just logistic items. This session is being recorded. I am going to go through things very quickly. I'm going to move quite fast. I only have 90 minutes, so I'm going to move very quickly. Everything that I share with you today is going to get sent to you after. So I'm going to be sharing with you these slides. on a financial model. I'm going to keep some notes as well. I like to keep some notes as we go. And so all of that will get sent to you when the webinar is over. In addition, the webinar is being recorded. So if there's something you want to see again, you're welcome. The CFA Society will have a link in a recording to share the actual full recording if you want to take a look at it again. Excellent. So as Gary generously mentioned in his intro to me, so my name is Ian Schnoor. I'm up here in Toronto, but I've had the opportunity to teach financial modeling all over the world, literally all over the world, which has been a ton of fun. As he mentioned, I started my career in investment banking for a number of years. And then 20 years ago, started a training business called the Marquee Group, where we provide training courses in valuation, Excel, financial modeling, to banks, pension funds, insurance companies, business schools. I actually teach regularly at Brandeis University as well, just in Boston. And I've been teaching all sorts of financial topics all over the world for many years, which has been a lot of fun. And more recently, around 5 years ago, I'm actually wearing a second different hat today. About 5 years ago, a bunch of us from around the world recognized that there was a new need, and we tried to fill that need. And that was to develop something that was truly a rigorous, independent accreditation organization. Think of it like the CFA Institute for Financial Modeling. And this happened because a number of years ago, and I'm curious to know if anyone has ever seen this, a number of years ago, a lot of job postings started changing. It used to be, when I joined banking years ago, it used to be that recruiters were looking for an MBA or an undergrad or a CPA or a CFA. But I would say around 7, 8 years ago, job postings started saying, we're looking for those people, and then there was a big and they say, and we want candidates who have proven financial modeling skills. Or they would say, or they have, we want people who have strong financial modeling skills. And I'm just curious, I'm going to look over. Has anyone ever seen a job posting that specifically says we're looking for people who have strong financial modeling skills? Raise your hands if you've seen that before. Yeah, I see a few of you have raised your hands, right? Michael, Nicholas. Yeah, anyone else ever seen that? Sure, right? James. A bunch of you have seen that. It's pretty common. And I will tell you, it's quite new. It's the last 5, 7 years that you, Stefan's saying, I'm looking for those people right now. Well, that is new then. I don't hope I'm Stefan or Stefan. I'm not, hope I'm saying it correctly, but yeah, that's new, right, Stefan? 10 years ago, nobody said that on a job posting. You just hired people and you crossed your fingers. But the problem is there is no way, there has been historically no way for somebody to prove that they had strong modeling skills. You could take a course. There's a lot of training firms that have great training. Firms like Training the Street or Wall Street Prep or the Marquee Group, have great courses, and a lot of others as well. But simply taking a course doesn't mean you have great skills, right? Taking any course doesn't prove that you really are exceptional. So what we've done at the Financial Modeling Institute is we've developed a very rigorous, independent 3-level examination program. Level 1 is called the AFM, where you need to build up a full integrated model in under 4 hours from scratch. It's proctored. It's virtual, but it's proctored. And so what I'm hoping, Stefan, is you and others in the future, as we build this out, we'll start to recognize that when someone has AFM on their resume, that means that they have outstanding, excellent modeling skills. It's a very challenging test. Now, actually, if you're interested in that, and again, I'm not here to talk about the FMI today. I'm going to move on to our tips in a moment, but we just launched at the FMI a new program, an early entry program. It's called our Foundations program, and actually we have a promotion for it right now. It is a sort of a softer entry point to let people get comfortable with modeling concepts, because it's a lot. The AFM exam is fairly challenging, so Foundations is a more gentler on-ramp. And if you want to check that out, feel free to take a look at our website. You can also follow me. You can email me if you have any questions. You can follow me on LinkedIn actually as well. I do a lot. I'm going to be doing a lot of posting. I started posting on my LinkedIn page a free video series on the top 10 reasons why a balance sheet doesn't balance. So if you want to follow me, I've got one more coming out tomorrow. You'll be the first to see them, and they've got a lot of traction. I've got one out so far and it's got a lot of traction. So I've got 10 more coming. So if you want to do that, you're always welcome to be in touch and reach out to me in that way. So that's a little bit who I am. I want to jump into our reason why we're here now. As I said, I've been running modeling courses all over the world for a long time. And through the thousands of times I've worked with models and worked with people, has kind of come to light some best practices. And so to put together what I think are my favorite top 10 best practices. And my promise to you today is that if you can build a model and incorporate many or most of these top 10 best practices, you will have a best-in-class, world-class model that works really, really well. So let's dive into them. Quick question here. I'm looking over. I want you to love you to go into raise your hands again. How many of you, often people come to these sessions and have never built any models before, which is totally fine. And sometimes people have done a lot of modeling. How many of you have done a decent amount of financial modeling? How many of you have built, at least a few models before? Do me a favor, raise your hands if you've actually built a few models. Great. Okay, a bunch of you have. Right, Chris, right? Sure. I can see a bunch of hands going up. Fantastic. That's great. I'm going to try and, so for you guys, I'm trying to try and focus on some tips that will help get your models to the next level, some ideas that will maybe even elevate them further. And how many, raise your hands if you've really not done much modeling. I'd love to see how many of you are sort of just getting started, newer into the disc. And don't be shy, we all start somewhere. There was a time when I knew nothing about financial modeling. So yeah, a bunch of hands going up as well. Obviously, some of you are brand new. So let's do this. I am going to start here with a few notes. And again, this notes file I'm going to share with you. I want to start with a very, very simple, basic question, just to get us on the same page, on the same playing field, which is, what is a financial model? Sounds like a silly question, but you know what? I've asked this question thousands of times all over the world, and I get a wide range of answers. What I want to share with you is this, that it's simply a forecast. All we're trying to do is build a forecast of usually a company. It could be of a project, but in many instances, we are forecasting of a company. And usually, well, let me ask you, when you guys have been involved in forecasting, how far in the future are your models? How many time periods, how many years in the future? Do you want to go into the chat? I'm curious to know what you have seen. What's normal in your world, in your 3 to 5, Svetla is saying, right? 5 to 10, Alex is saying, great, 5 years, 2 to 3, 2 to 5, sure. Of a company, I will say for sure, I will say the most common that I've seen is 5 to 10 years is the most common. But there's no right answer. Some models are longer, some models are shorter. It really depends on what you need. Yeah, Patrick, you're saying up to 10. I got to tell you, I was surprised a few years ago. I was working with a large industrial client, and I encountered the longest model I had ever seen in my life. They chose to forecast one of their manufacturing facilities for the next 120 years. I said, really? Do you guys really need a 120-year forecast? You're going to be dead by then. Anyway, they cut it back. They said, yeah, that's pretty silly, isn't it? They didn't even know why they did that. So they cut it back to 60. Anyway, thought that was still a little bit much, but whatever. There's no perfect answer. We have to forecast whatever seems reasonable. 5 to 10 is very, very common. Fine. That's simple. All we're trying to do is build a forecast. It sounds very simple, but there is a problem. There is a problem, right? All we're trying to do is take a company's historical financial statements and forecast them into the future. But there is a problem, and that's why we are here. The problem that I will tell you is that most forecast models are a mess. Most forecast models, and I have seen hundreds, if not thousands of people's models over the years. So many models are hard to use, hard to understand, and it makes it very difficult to use them effectively. So by sharing with you some of my favorite 10 tips, I want to help you understand how you can make sure your models are clean and legible and usable for any scenario you need. Now, why is it so important? Why is modeling so important? Why is this skill set so important? I will tell you, because models have become, and I've seen this evolve over the last 20 years, models have become the most important decision-making tool in finance, in all of finance. Models have become the most important decision-making tools in all of business and finance. Can you guys go into the chat? I'd love to see what types of decisions are you making with your models, right? There's a lot. Tell Type into the chat for me, what types of decisions are you seeing people make with their models? Yeah, sure. You're saying, right, equity, Bessie, your equity returns. So I'll call that investment decision, returns, looking at returns. Well, oh, great, fantastic, love it. I see buy, sell, or we could say go, no go, right? Are we buying something? Are we selling something? Maybe I'll put this on its own separate category, right? There is, are we making a go or no go decision? Oh, sure, people will make operating decisions. Sure, everything I'm seeing here is fantastic, right? For reporting, operating decisions, reporting decisions, people are building models for M&A decisions, for evaluating risk and volatility, right? I can see, who wrote this before? I can see forecasting prices, right? By forecasting prices, understanding the volatility of price movements. Yeah, we've got all sorts of great, every single thing you guys have here. Valuation, sure, investment, right? Valuation. So the point is, why am I writing this? The point is, we are building models to make every major type of decision. And as I said, models are often a mess. So what I want to share with you is some of my favorite top 10 skills and tips to ensure that that is not the case. And by the way, do me a favor. I'd love to see, with a show of hands, how many of you have ever opened up a spreadsheet? How many of you have ever opened up a spreadsheet that you did not build and you were like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to understand this. I can't follow what's going on. Formulas were flying all over the place, left and right. Have formulas so long that they were wrapping around. Has anyone here ever looked at a spreadsheet model and been frustrated or overwhelmed? I'm looking over at you guys now. Yeah, with how hard it was to follow. Sure, look at all these hands going up, how difficult it was. Well, you're not alone. You're not alone. That happens to everybody. And what I will tell you, if you ever feel that way, about a model you're looking at, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It should have been built better, more organized, cleaner. And you know, if you've got an ability to provide feedback, then I want you to be able to do that. But what I will tell you is that all models, before I get into my 10 tips, let me just leave you with one comment here. How do you know if a model is working well? How do you know if a model is a really strong model? Think of your own models like this as well. All models need to work in two different ways. And even very experienced modelers often don't achieve these criteria. I tell everyone that I ever work with that every good model has to work in two distinct ways. Number one, it needs to work well electronically. All I mean by that is that every formula must make sense. So let's imagine I built a model and I sent it to you and I emailed it to you. If you opened up my model on your screen, you should feel like, when you go down, you should feel like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. I understand what Ian is doing. Every single cell, every step along the way, it flows, it's logical. And that doesn't happen all the time. Often models are filled with convoluted formulas that link and all over the place and are very difficult to track. So electronically means that it's clear that any client or anyone working with you will understand every cell. I will also tell you that every good model, and we don't always think this way, guys, but I would encourage you to think this way. Every good model should work well on paper, or I'll say, or as a PDF. And I will tell you that's because even in this day and age, the vast majority of decision makers want to look at something on paper or as a PDF. The senior executives don't usually sit around poking through a spreadsheet and playing with it in order to make their decision. What I will tell you, just to kind of finish this up, is that a good model needs to tell a story. A good model needs to tell a story. And, you know, as finance and accounting professionals, we often don't think of ourselves as storytellers, but it's so important to build a model in a way that allows you to communicate in a way, because it creates tremendous confidence with your readers when you do that. So this is the ultimate goal of what we're trying to achieve: a model that's clean, that flows, that is understandable electronically, that works well on paper as a communication tool. If you can do that, I promise your models will be much better regarded than most other people's. who are also building models. So let's now dive in. I'm going to move into the slides. And again, I encourage you, if you have comments, questions, feel free. I will try and watch them as we go through here. But let me dive in now to the actual 10 tips and dive into them because I've got a lot to cover. There's a couple slides you can take a look at your own here. Again, you're going to get these sent to you after. The reason I like modeling, and a lot of people do, is it's a very multidisciplinary skill set. To be good at modeling, you need to have some really good Excel skills. You have to understand how to design data and how to organize data. You have to understand accounting. Do we have any accountants here? Are there any? Does anyone here have an accounting designation? I'm just looking over. Anyone want to raise their hands? Anyone? Don't be shy. You can will feel free to admit it. So not a lot. You don't need to be an accountant, but I am not an accountant. I teach accounting, but I'm not an accountant. But you need to understand the way all the numbers talk to each other. You need to understand finance so we can pull it all together. A good model has to achieve all of these criteria here. You can see this in the slides after, to be really flexible and obvious and printable. And you can read this when you get to them. But what I do want to jump into then here is, and I'll come to this, after, is my modeling best practices page. So many reasons why models come off the rails are simple reasons. And I want to talk about some general best practices. And this is not, by the way, I'm not trying to give you my personal belief. And by the way, the belief at the FMI is we don't promote a particular style. There are lots of different styles of models. And they can all work well, but there are some general best practices that will work under any style. By the way, when I talk about style, I'll just let me touch on point number 6 for a second here. I will tell you that there are two general styles or approaches to building a model, and I will refer to those. I'll clean up the typos before we send this to you. There are two general approaches, general styles of building a model. One is vertically, and one is horizontally. Vertically just means that most of the pieces in a model live on a fewer number of sheets. So all the financial statements would be stacked on top of each other. Whereas horizontally means that most of the elements in a model are on different tabs, on different sheets. So this usually means that each financial statement on a different sheet, right? So you would have in a model a sheet for income statement, and then the next sheet is for the cash flow statement, and then the next tab is the balance sheet. By the way, has anyone done that or seen that before? How many of you have seen or built models where every financial statement is on its own separate tab? That's referred to as a horizontal approach. Anyone want to raise your hands? Right, William, you've seen it. A lot of you here, right? Liam, Michael. So one of my recommendations, I'm going to show you a really nice tip later in this webinar to manage that. What I will tell you is both are fine. Don't let anyone tell you different. There are people out there in the world who will say you must build vertically or you must build horizontally. Don't listen to any of them. Both approaches are reasonable and are fine. But what I would say is you need to be a bit more careful with horizontal models because you're linking much more back and forth to different sheets. I often see a lot more errors in horizontal models. So as an example here, I'm going to be showing you a model. This is one of the sample models that we use at the Financial Modeling Institute, and it's for the Henderson Manufacturing Company. This sample model is using a vertical orientation. We also have a version of this exact model built using a horizontal orientation that has more tabs. But I would suggest that if you are building horizontally on lots of tabs, you need to be a little more careful because there's a little bit more crisscrossing going on. But stick around because I'm going to show you a fantastic tip later to navigate, to manage this sort of approach. Now, while there are different styles, and I would never say one is better than the other, there are some times when vertical makes more sense, sometimes when horizontal makes more sense. Be open to both. What I will tell you though is that there are some general best practices that work under all scenarios. And I have my best practices right here. I also have them in my notes file. So I'm going to start them right here. The first two tips that I want to share with you is that it is in regardless of what approach you are using, it is so critical to properly plan a model. And I'm going to give you a framework for how to think about that. I got to tell you guys, so often when I see models, in so many models that I've seen over the years, it's obvious that there was no plan. And I will recommend 3 steps to planning any model. In fact, my one promise is if you just do this, if all you do after today's webinar is you start thinking a little bit more carefully about model design and model plan, that in itself is going to ensure that your models are built and designed a little bit more deliberately, a little bit more appropriately, and will work a little bit more effectively. Not 3 steps, but 3 steps to planning any model. And by the way, I've got, when you turn in my slides, when you get these sent to you, this slide here, which is slide number 15, has a slide on the planning process. So I'm going to say here, just so you, page 15 of the slides, so you can see it on your own. What I would strongly encourage you to do, and we do this all the time, is that when you start working on a model, step number 1, when you're planning it, is to think about the major issues, or what I like to call the key drivers of the business. Every company, guys, I will tell you, all companies have 3 to 5, maybe 6 key drivers. Okay, 3 to 5 key drivers, not 100. There's never 100 key drivers. So what are these things? Because your job as the model builder is to try to identify them. What are they? These are the variables, usually assumptions, that are hard to forecast and hard to control. They are hard to forecast, they are hard to control, but they will have a big impact on the success or failure of the business. These will be issues these can be issues like commodity prices. These can be issues like, let me ask you, guys, what's the price of gasoline going to be this time next year? Can someone go to the chat? What do you think? What's the price of gasoline in your car, for your car, going to be at this time next year? Let's imagine that we were building a model and we had to know gasoline prices because we were modeling an airline or we were modeling a shipping company. I'd love to see your thoughts on this. Can someone go into the chat for a second? What do you think? What do you think gas prices will be in a year from now? Right? Liam says 450. Is he right? Maybe. What else? Anyone else have a view on where gas prices will be next year? That's it. 450. $3, 3 cents. So great. Excellent. The point is this. If I'm, love it. So there's a range, maybe $3, maybe $5, maybe 450. Could they be, Liam, I'm going to ask you, Liam, is it possible gas prices could be $6 next year? I mean, is it possible? Probably not. Like, you'd probably say not likely, right? Because there would be like riots on the street, right? Like there'd be revolts. People would be, knocking down gas stations at that point. But it's possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. My point is, variables like this that can significantly impact any business, I want to be able to run multiple cases. These are issues like commodity prices, FX rates, etc., that are tough to forecast. So we want to run different cases with these variables. And so what I would say is I want to think about them. I want to understand which variables are going to have a major impact on my business. So in your planning stage, number 1, think about the major issues. Number 2, I would say make a list of all other assumptions. And I would say here, make a big list. Just make a big list of all the assumptions that you need. Example, on things like sales volumes, the different costs. What are the costs that this company have? Like energy costs, input costs, marketing costs. I need to understand the business. Things like interest rates. Great. Right. So you're talking about, Viva's got a comment, electric vehicles to gas cars. Will that have an impact? Right. You're thinking about key critical issues, tax rates, etc. Think about all the assumptions you're going to need. And you know what? This is going to sound like a silly comment, but I would say ask lots of questions. When you are building a model, one of the most important jobs that a model builder can do is ask tons and tons of questions. it's usually not your job. It's not your job to invent the assumptions. You need to do research, talk to people, and often that gets lost, and a model builder will just make assumptions on their own, which is not necessary. So think about all the detail that you want in your model. And then the last thing I would say when you're planning the model is plan out what it will look like on paper. Plan out what will the model look like on paper. Think of it as a presentation. Pretend you're building a PowerPoint presentation and think about what it will look like, because if you do that, I promise you, it will start to come together much, much more effectively. So I've got that described on slide 15 here. You can read this on your own when you get here. This process allows you to become very smart about the business. And that's one of the critical goals of modeling, to get very intelligent and very insightful about the organization. If we can see here, so my first two tips, we do this. I've built over 100 models. Every single time I want to know, what is the model going to look like? What does my plan look like? It gives me a roadmap, and I'm asking tons and tons of questions, which helps me get really smart. So don't take that for granted. It's a critical piece of all models. Now, before I actually get into the model itself, I actually want to show you what this model looks like as a paper model. I already showed you the Henderson model in Excel. I want to quickly show you now what this model would look like as if I was to print out this model on paper, or if I emailed it to my client as a PDF. It looks like this. By the way, I want to show you how many pages. This model is 15 pages long. Can you see where I am here? That's kind of medium size. Some models, of course, are a lot longer. Some are a little shorter. This is sort of a medium-sized model to capture a business. But I want you to see what the experience is when someone is flipping it, when they are reviewing it and flipping it on the screen as a presentation or as a piece of paper. Of course, the very first thing you can see is a cover page. And it's so important to have a cover page. I know it's not always the case. So many models do not have a cover page. All it does is it creates some confidence, tells the reader that this is actually a financial document. So I have a simple cover page here, which again makes it feel like a professional tool right off the bat. The second thing I've got here in my model is an executive summary. And so many models don't do this, right? Why is this the next thing I have in my model, guys? The very first real page in my model is a summary output page. It's an executive summary. Now, this is the way my client wanted to see the summary. They wanted to see, so you can see here, I've got three boxes. I've got a base case box. I've got a best case. I've got a worst case box. This has to be customized. You can put charts and graphs, visuals. My client just wanted to see three different tables to show what revenue and EBITDA might look like in the future. But the most important comment is why. Why is this the next thing that we want to always put in a model? Does anyone want to go into the chat and just type in your thoughts around that? Why is this so critical to start the model with a simple cover page and then move to an executive summary? So many models don't do this. Well, I hope it's obvious. It's because I promise you, the first thing a client always wants to know is, what's the answer? Exactly, right, Michael? Get to the point. Michael, let me ask you a question. The client says, I want to know the answer. Get to the point, right? Michael, if you're my boss or you're my client, Michael wants to know what's the answer. And maybe, Michael, you wanted to know the NPV or the IRR. And if you did, I would have put that on the summary page. But you wanted to know EBITDA growth margins. Michael, help me out. If I do not have an executive summary in my model, where do you have to go as my boss to find the point? Because that's what you want to know. What's the point? Where do you have to go to find the information you want if I don't have an executive summary? This is the challenge in so many models. What do you think? Yeah, sure, unknown. Or you got to start flipping, right? You got to start jumping and flipping and trying to find the answer. So the point is, the first thing we want to know is what's the answer, and I will show you all the answers. Of course, what's the next thing then? Well, the next thing in my model is a page with inputs and assumptions. And I actually have a couple pages, page 3, page 4. This is all inputs and assumptions. Why? Because as soon as you show somebody the answer, right? Here's my executive summary. As soon as you show somebody the answer, the next thing they always want to know is, how did you get there, right, Michael? What decisions did you make to get there? What inputs did you make to get there? So if I show this to Michael and Michael says, Ian, this is great. This is a nice executive summary. How did you get there? I can say, Michael, that's a great question. Flip the page and I will walk you through it. I will show you all the assumptions I made about pricing and operating costs and depreciation and equity, etc. These are all the assumptions right here. After that, I have a page with scenarios, which I'll talk about. And then I get into the actual calculations. There's a revenue forecast. By the way, do not look at any numbers. Just look at the titles with me. I want you to see the titles as I flip. There's a revenue forecast. There's a cost forecast. Why am I flipping it quickly? This is what a client will do. Here's the income statement. Here's the cash flow statement and the balance sheet. What I hope you agree is that it flows, it's legible, and it's readable. Someone can actually read it. It feels like a presentation. It has a header. It's got a title for my page. It's got page numbers. The numbers are all readable, and that will create an enormous amount of confidence. So what I want to jot down a quick note is this is model flow. This is so important as well. Model flow is critical. Let me show this to you, and then I want to move into some nice tips. I want to show you a couple technical tips that I think you're going to like here. Model flow is critical, and here is a common flow that I want to show you. It's what I just showed you right now. Clients love it. And it doesn't matter how you structure the model, but the way it should be presented tracks the way people think. So I said it's nice to have a cover page because that tells them what they're looking at. It feels like a presentation. The next thing that you always want to have is an executive summary. And I said this should be customized. Should be customized for your needs, your client, your particular project. And then, of course, the next thing it's nice to have is an assumptions page, which answers the questions, how did you get there? How did you get there? After that, it's nice to see scenarios, and you're going to see this all in the model when I share it with you after. And then after the scenarios is all of the calcs, all of the calculations. We've got the schedules, and the financial statements live beyond that. But this flow often dictates the way people think. And when you do this, it allows people to read it as though they are, and allows you to communicate it as though you're telling a story. So what we've gotten here so far, I've talked about the first two. I'm going to move on to the next two, and then we will quickly fly through the rest here. Don't take this for granted. It's so critical. This planning and asking good questions allows you to design a model well and to get really smart about the business. And amazingly, even experienced modelers don't do that. Now, tip number 3 says to keep the assumptions up front. Now, I talked about that. I told you that it's very important to keep the assumptions up front. Now, and the reason keep the assumptions up front, and I said that we like to do that because it answers the question right up front, right? How did you get there? If I show you my model and I show you the answer, the first thing you're going to want to know after, right? As soon as I show you the answer, you're going to want to know, Ian, how did you get there, right? And I mentioned that already, but there's a problem with this, right? It answers the question, how did you get there, right? I can say to my client, let's turn the page. By the way, let's look at it electronically for one moment. Electronically, I've got my cover sheet. I have my executive summary right here. All the summary values are laid out here. And then, of course, the next thing that I have in the model is all of the assumptions. By the way, it's very, very easy to build the assumptions if you made a strong plan. So I'll put a note here. It's very easy to build if you have a strong plan. If you planned out the model, it makes it very easy to design and organize all of your assumptions. And I told you it's nice to do that, but I got to tell you, some people resist this concept. I have had many, many people over the years, all over the world. They've said to me, yeah, Ian, I get it. I understand why it's nice to have the assumptions up front. It answers the question, how did you get there? But I've had so many people say to me that they're hesitant to put the assumptions up front. So by the way, can someone go to, first of all, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. Has anybody here ever seen a model that did not have the assumptions up front? Or maybe some of the assumptions were up front, but many were not. Have you ever seen, right? I'm looking at, right, Connor, you've seen that. Anyone else ever seen, right? Lots of hands, right? William, Chris, models where Daniel, where the assumptions were not all together up front. So where were they? Can someone go to the chat? If you ever see a financial model and the assumptions were not all together up front, like this, in my model, they're all together. Where are they? Where do they live in people's models? Thank you, right? Does everyone see what Michael said? Yeah, and what Svetla said. Sure, I like all your answers, right? Scatter. Look at Michael said they're scattered throughout next to the calcs. Svetla said they're within the statements, they're buried, exactly, maybe in the notes, hard-coded, right? Everywhere. So instinctively, it feels like that's a little messy to do what you guys are suggesting, and I agree with you. But there's a reason. There's a reason why some people like to scatter their assumptions. I'm going to show it to you right now. Some people like to scatter their assumptions because they want to see what the results will be. I'm going to show you something, and then I want to show you two excellent tips. I think you're going to like these a lot. Okay. Some people resist this concept because they want to change an assumption and see the results right away. So that's why I've had people that work in equity research and banking say to me, yeah, Ian, I don't want my assumptions up front because of this. Let me show you an example. Can you guys all see here? Can you guys all see that I have assumed a raw material cost of $226 per unit, right? Very simple. I'm assuming raw materials $226 per unit. What if I was told that the raw materials are actually going to be $250? Look at that. I'm going to change it to be $250. Okay. And I pressed enter. Done. Okay. Easy. So what? What happened? Well, I don't know. What happened? What do I want to know? Now I want to know what happened to the EBITDA. What happened to net income? What happened to cash flow? What happened to IRR? What happened to credit ratios? I don't know. So if I change an assumption here, I now need to go looking everywhere in my model to find the answer. So some people have said to me that they like scattering their assumptions because that way, when they change something, they can see the answer. And you know what? I get it. I actually totally get that. But it's not ideal. It's not optimal because it makes it really hard for any other user to use the model. So I'm going to share with you three great options to get the best, spell properly, of both worlds. And best of both worlds means assumptions up front and see results right away. So let me show you three great options to do that. The first option is just to have a summary box on the assumptions tab. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a very simple approach and you might like it, but what you could do is have a very simple executive summary box right up front. So as an example, I could do something like this, and I have a lot of modelers that like doing this. They might just say something that says model outputs, not everything, but you might have a couple key outputs right here. So maybe you want to look at EBITDA and net income, right? So maybe very simply, you want to just look at EBITDA and net income right up front. I could just have a couple of years here. Look, I'm going to do this quickly, and I could just link them back, right? I could link them into my income statement. I'm going to go down, and here's my EBITDA in my first year. So I can just simply link that up, copy it over. You get the idea. And the same thing with net income. So of course, as I change an input, I can see right here. So that's one very, very simple option. You may like that, you might not, but that's the first one. Here's a couple more that are technical, and I think you will like these. One option that's really powerful that people like a lot is to use Excel's watch window feature. This is one of my favorite features. It's not that well known. Has anyone used it? Can you raise your hands if you've ever used Excel's watch window feature? Do me a favor and let me know if you've used it. This is great. Jacob, you have. Fantastic. I'm sure a few of you have used the watch window. Many of you probably have not. So watch this one carefully because this is a really great feature. It's not often that well known. This feature used to be hidden, but now they've brought it to the forefront. So where does it live, by the way? It lives under here. It lives under, look where I'm going to go, formulas. And there's a box called, you might have said, I never even noticed that. Well, it never used to live on the menus. It used to be hidden. So it lives under formulas, watch window. And if you want to use the keyboard, of course, you're going to go Alt and then letter M, Alt M, and then W, because the watch window has a W, Alt M W. Let me just close it and I'll open it again in the model. So Alt M W will also open it up. Now, watch how it works, please. You're going to like this. So let's imagine I'm here on my assumption page and I want to watch EBITDA and net income and credit ratios. I can say, let's pop open the watch window and it's here. And I'm going to say add one. I'm going to add a watch. You see, I'll click the button that says add a watch and it wants to know, what do you want to watch? I will quickly click on my income statement and look what I've done. I've highlighted 3 years of EBITDA and I will click add. Very, very simple. And now the EBITDA numbers live in this box. Let me do one more for you. I will add a watch. I'll go back to the model. This time I will click on 3 years of net income. You can see that, and I will add this watch. So now I've got a window that's giving me insight deep, deep into my model, EBITDA and net income. Of course, the beauty, watch this, is if I now change my raw material to be 250, keep your eyes on the box. When I press enter, all the numbers change. So now I don't have to be jumping back and forth all the time. I can simply make changes up front in my assumptions and see instantly what that's doing to my answers. I can put credit ratios here. I can put the valuation numbers here, and I have a good insight into what's happening. How many of you are going to try this? Raise your hand if you think you'll try this. I'd love it if you try this. If you say you're going to try it, then that means you have to try it. So raise your hand or thumb if you're going to. Okay, great. Excellent. Good. Fantastic. I really hope you do, because I've know so many modelers that like this tool a lot and find it helpful. So if you try it, if you have a question, shoot it in the chat, but I hope you do like this and find it a helpful tool. I'm going to show you one more way that you can, oh, great. James, great. Thank you for the question, James. Excellent. You're asking this. James is saying, you're wondering this, right? There's a name column. Is that what you've noticed, James? And you're wondering, how do I, so does everyone see? I think that's what you're asking, right, James? How do I change the names and make them show up in here? Right. I think that's what he's asking about. Right now, this column is showing up blank in the watch window because, yeah, exactly. So what James is saying, and I thought James is saying that right now, I kind of know that this is EBITDA because it's in row 92. And I kind of know that this is net income because it's in row 104. But yeah, you're right, James. If you had a, if you had a whole bunch of things in here, you might not remember, right, James? You might not remember which is EBITDA, which is net income, which is your credit ratio, for sure. So the best way to do that is to name the cells. Now, as a general rule, I'm not a huge fan of naming. I don't usually name a lot, but this is a nice example to do that. So let's go here to the model sheet. If I was to do this, watch, keep your eyes on my watch window. If I went to EBITDA here and I named it, right now the name is just the default address, K92. If I rename this EBITDA for 22, well, I'll call it 2022, whatever, and press enter. You see that now, James? This is EBITDA for 2022. And maybe that's good enough, right, James? Maybe I'll just name the 2022 ones. Maybe I'll name this cell net income 2022. So at least I know, right, James, that this one, everything below it is in EBITDA. From here down, I've got net incomes. So if you do a little bit of naming, you can see what it is. You can get credit ratios, valuation, etc. So hopefully that helps, but that would allow you to more easily understand what the numbers are referencing. Very good question. Anastasia, you're saying, can this watch window be saved so that it shows up? Yeah, it should. Like, watch, if I X out of it, I'm going to close it. If I X out of it, and then go Alt MW, it pops right open. I believe that when you save the file and reopen it, it should show up in the same way. It has for me in the past. It should. So try that. In fact, if it doesn't, Anastasia, let me know. But if it doesn't, Anastasia, if it doesn't, you might like this last tip that I'm going to share with you, which is a really powerful tool as well. And that is to use, watch this one then, guys, to use Excel's camera tool. You're thinking, wow, I didn't know Excel had a camera to take pictures, but it does. Has anyone used, I'm looking, I'll be honest, I usually it's pretty rare that someone knows about the camera tool. Has anyone used the camera feature in Excel before? I do see some hands up. These might be holdovers. Maybe some of you have used it, a couple of you. Let me show you this really nice feature, this really powerful tool in Excel. Anyone building models can benefit from this tool. But you need to, I'll put a note here, you need to activate you use a new window. Yeah, Jacob, you like to use a new window. It's another option. Great. The issue with a new window is you're still just seeing a second window. What I like about, so it's a great comment, Jacob, and it works very well. Jacob saying that he likes to have two separate windows open, and one window might have his assumptions and the other window might have his income statement. It's great. It's an awesome. The only issue with that, though, again, use it if you like it. By all means, use it. This is just for ideas. The only little issue with potentially that, right, James, is Jacob, sorry, is if you, let's say you want to watch EBITDA and net income and a bunch of valuation numbers and a bunch of credit ratios, and they're all in very different spots in the model. You'd have to have a few different windows open. Alternatively, with the watch window, you can watch things from all over the place, all in this one box. So again, just an idea, just options. I want to show you lots of options to use. Having multiple windows is also a very good idea. But I want to show you this feature that's not very well known. It is Excel's camera tool. Can you see on my screen? I have a button here that says camera, and you're like, what the heck is that? How did Ian get a camera? Well, here's what you need to do. You need to activate it first in the Tools Options menu. You need to activate it in the Tools Options menu, which, by the way, the keyboard shortcut is Alt-T-O. Alt-T-O. Activates the Tools Options menu, or you can go to File and then File Options. You've been here a million times probably. You go to File, right? The File menu down to Options and pop that open. Watch this. I am now going to go and I'm going to move the green bar down to my quick access toolbar. Can you see the quick access toolbar here? This is actually a neat menu. If you've never been here, I encourage you to check it out. I am going to go in the quick access toolbar and I'm going to click on all commands. Watch this, guys. If I click all commands, it gives me a list of every single feature that lives in Excel. Most of these features do not live on the menus. There's too many. There's hundreds and hundreds of Excel features that you've never heard of because they live in here and they're not on the menus. Look at all these. This is just under the A's. I'm still just in A's. Look at all these A options, A, right? There are so many features you probably never knew existed in Excel. Now I'm into the B's, a lot of B's in here, in the C's. There's an option called camera, and this is where you find it. And you need to add it. When you add it, it moves into the box on the right, okay? And when I added it, it showed up there. And then when you do that, it pops open on the top of your screen. Watch this, though. It's really nice. And maybe, Jacob, you'll like this. If you want to try it out, this is something that people like to use once they learn about it. Look what I'm going to do. I am actually going to, for 1 second, hide a few columns. And I'm going to do this. I am going to select my entire income statement. You see what I did? I selected my income statement and click the camera. The camera takes a picture of it. You see that I've taken a picture of it. Now, when I go back to my assumption page, I'm going to go to the very top and I'm going to click once. And when I click once, what it did is it pasted it. It pasted a picture of my income statement. You can see that here. It's just pasted off to the side. Now, this looks like a dead photo, but it's not. And I can put it wherever I want. It looks like a dead photo, but the beauty of this feature, watch, is if I ever change an operating cost, let's say to 250, and I press enter, watch please my photo when I press enter. Take a look. It's a dynamic photo. Every single thing changed. So, another option, Jacob, is you could take a picture of your income statement. You could take a little picture of your cash flow, of your debt ratios, and have a few different photos nicely organized off to the side. And when you change assumptions, you can see what that's doing to outputs later in your model. Okay, so that's that one. Just curious, who's going to try this one after? I'm just curious if you're going to try using a camera. Raise your thumb or your hand. Awesome. Great. Jacob likes it. Fantastic. Very cool. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, good. I like, it's neat, right? It's simple, but you just hadn't heard of it because it's not in the menus. Excellent. A bunch of you like it and you're raising your hands. Fantastic. I hope you like it. And again, if you don't like it, that's great. All I'm trying to do is give you ideas, but the main reason I wanted to share those ideas is to satisfy one critical issue in modeling: keep the assumptions up front. And if anyone ever says they don't like to keep the assumptions up front, it's because they're afraid of what happens, because they want to see the answer. And I've now showed you three ways to see the answers and have the assumptions up front. I also talked about, in one of the best practices to make inputs blue. You probably all know that within modeling, one of the key best practices is to make sure that inputs are one color. Typically blue is used, and formulas or links should be another color. And that's just so that it's clear, so it's obvious, right? If you're playing with my model, you know which numbers you can play with. The blue ones are the ones you can change. The black ones are doing their own thing, and that's a pretty common convention. So I encourage you to use this discipline as well in your models. So many models don't do this, and then it's really hard. When you're just looking at hundreds of black numbers, it's hard to know which ones you can play with and which ones you can't. This gets us to the first four here. Let me touch on, again, if there's any questions or comments, toss them in the chat. Let me quickly get into number 5, and then the last 5 are very, very important, but I can do them very quickly. The last 5 I can probably do. Great website. Fantastic. Bessie, before you so Bessie's got to run. Yeah, and if anyone else has to go, it's being recorded, so you can watch it again. But you can check out what we're doing at the FMI. You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can email me, through the FMI, through the training business. We have through a resources page. So lots of access, but send me a note after and I'm happy to direct you to what you need. Okay. So let's go through the last ones here then. I strongly encourage you in every model you ever build to include a scenarios page. I would say you need a scenarios page in every model you ever build. Every single model you ever build should have a scenarios page, and it simply looks something like this. Right here it is. Here is my scenarios page. Very, very simple. Look what I have here. It's not very long. It's not very difficult. I have 3 more variables. You see this? I've got cost inflation, I've got sales prices, and I've got sales volumes. So all these, what I'm doing here is these look like assumptions. And if you think they're assumptions, you're right. So these are assumptions. They are more assumptions here. Let me put a little note. These are just more assumptions, but these are the key drivers. These are the key drivers. These are the most important assumptions in the model. These are the ones like gas prices, right? Remember you guys gave me, I'm looking back at your forecast on gas prices. These are the variables that are hard to forecast, hard to control. And so we want to run more than one option. These are the key drivers. And so we want to run a few options. And so I encourage you, and again, this is i.e. like gas prices or FX. I want to be able to have a base case, a best case, a worst case. So the only difference is these assumptions have multiple cases. You can have base, you can have best, you can have worst, others, it doesn't matter. You can have as many cases as you want. So if we take a look at my model for cost inflation, I have a base case, a best case, and a worst case. Now, actually, inflation, some of you are thinking, what the heck? Inflation should be going up. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, these numbers are funny, but the blue numbers are just the assumptions. You can make them whatever you want. What's inflation going to be next year? I'm scared to ask. I'm scared to ask you guys what you think inflation is going to be next year, but what should I put in here? For base case, is it what, 6%, 7%? I don't know, but it's going to be more than 1%, isn't it? The point is, step 1 is to make your assumptions. What are the assumptions? And they are therefore inputs. They're blue. What do you think the base case will be for gas prices or inflation or interest rates or exchange rates? What's your base case? What's your best case? What's your worst case? talk to your team, talk to your boss, do some research, and enter all of the different cases. So my model will have the flexibility to run more than one option. So that's the first thing you do to set up a scenario page. The second thing you do is you have a number here that's a switch. Does everyone see this? And you're going to get the model. So just play with this model. Take a look at this page, please, when you get the model. You will have a number in a cell. You're going to enter a number that's just a numeric value. It's the switch. It tells the model which version we want to run, which case we want to run. Now, the skinny row here, does everyone see the skinny row at the top? This is what I call the live case. This is the live case. This is the one that's actually running in the model. So it needs to be a formula. Now, I will say many people use an if statement to build the live case, but it gets very long. You need a nested if. Maybe people use a nested if statement to build the live case. Has anyone here, can you raise your hand? Has anyone ever seen a nested if statement or built one where you have an if inside an if, right? John, Michael, Rebecca. Yeah. You've seen that show. A lot of hands. What's the most, Tim, what's the most times you've seen an if inside an if, right? It's a disaster, isn't it? It gets so, not a big fan, right, Jacob? Not a big fan. Neither am I. Actually, I've got a question. I'm looking at you guys now. Does anybody know how many times Excel allows you to have an if inside an if? How many ifs within ifs are you even allowed in Excel? Take a guess. A lot. Daniel says a lot. You're right, Daniel. In fact, they've increased it. They made it even more a lot. They made it even bigger, Daniel. I don't know why. I wish they didn't. You know, Daniel, I've gotten to know the head of Excel at Microsoft. Yes, there is actually a guy. His name is Brian. He is the head of Excel. And I don't know, somehow I've gotten to know him pretty well over the last couple of years. And I've given him some feedback. Some of it they listen to, but I'm not sure that they really do. They haven't changed that feature, that's for sure. There are way too many. They allow you to put in way too many nested ifs. It used to be 7. It used to be 7. Now it is 64. You can have 64 if within if within if. It's way too many. So I do not want you to use, many people use a nested if to build it, okay, but I will say it's not optimal. It is definitely not optimal because it gets very long. It gets clunky. So my recommendation, and you'll see this here, is to use a much more elegant feature, something like a choose function. This is one of my favorites because it is so simple. I'm going to say see page. Take a look at the slides here for a second. I just want to make sure you have reference. Oops. In the presentation that I'm going to send you, there are some slides, and you can see here slide number 23 is a slide on the choose function. See page 23 of the slides. And I'm going to show you this beautiful function called the choose function. Look how simple it is. Do you know why I like this tool? Because it's so simple. Because every single client I have ever shown this feature to says, wow, I get it. I understand this feature. It's so simple. Look what it does. The choose function says, where is your switch? My switch is this cell D6. Where is your switch? And then it literally just wants to know, where are the choices? That's it. Where's your switch? And then where are your choices? And it's really simple. If you put a 1 in the switch, it will pick up the next item in the list, G14. This is my base case. Let me move my label. If you put a 2, look, if I put a 2 in the switch, it now says, okay, this switch is a 2. I will pick up the second option in the list here, and it is my best case. And a 3 would retrieve the third case. So simple, so elegant. It is not a complex function, but everybody understands it, and that's the point. It's really helpful. And so, Jacob, you said you're not a big fan of nested ifs. I agree with you. I hope you agree this is a lot cleaner. This is a lot simpler. No nested functions. We don't have hundreds of brackets. It is clean, easy to follow, and simple to build. And I really encourage you to try this in your models. Okay, use it. I think you will like it because of just how easy it is to use. Now, the last thing to show you on this, and then I'm going to move into the last few tips here very quickly. The last tip that I want to show you is around this little drop down. You can see I have a little drop down. I don't want to leave, guys, I don't want to leave this little number 1. I don't want anyone to see that number 1. Can someone go into the chat? what's the problem with me having a model and having a number one just sitting here, right? I don't want my client to see this number one. Let's go to the PDF. Let's imagine that your client was looking at the scenario page on paper and they saw here, it just has a number one. What's the problem with somebody just seeing a number one on the page? Exactly. It's not intuitive, right, William? What does it mean? Your client is going to say, William, what does that mean? Why do you have a number one floating there in this? What are you talking about, right? Exactly. Remember, we said a model has to tell a story. It's got to be usable. It's got to tell a story. So that's exactly right, William. It doesn't mean much. I want to make this a lot more user-friendly, and I want to be clear to my reader. So I don't want to see the number one. What I want to do is have a little drop down, a little combo box that makes it much more elegant, much more effective. And by the way, for the combo box is on slide. Again, there is a slide for this in the book that I'm going to share with you. It is on slide number, where is it here? Back on slide 25. So slide 25 for combo box. And again, this is all going to be in the video recording. What do you do? Very, very simple. If you've never used this before, once again, I need to go back to my tools options, Alt-T-O, file, and then you go options, right? Does everyone see this? File options. And I'm going to go to quick access toolbar. Sorry, I'm not going to quick access toolbar here. I need to go to customize the ribbon because you have to enable it. So you guys can try this if you're in Excel. You need to go customize the ribbon, right? And what you need to do is put a check mark in the developer tab, right? Let me know. So some of you probably have this off. Some of you probably have this off. You need to turn the developer menu on. And when you do, right, this one might be off and you just turn it on. You click it on. And when you do that, you will have a new menu. Do you see this? You'll get a brand new menu in Excel that says developer. And by the way, this will always stay. Now that I open up Excel, this menu will always be here. You literally go developer. You click on the insert menu. You go to the form controls. So again, you go developer, you go to the insert menu, to the form controls, and I click on the combo box, the second one here, and then you can just draw one. That's it. I've just drawn one. And once I've drawn it, I can right click and format it. Okay, I can format this little new drop down. It's very simple. Again, you can watch it again or read the slide. It just wants to know two things. It wants to know where is your input range, and that is just my range of words, right? That is just my base, best, and worst, the words, base, best, and worst. And cell link means where is the actual switch. Again, the input range means where's the range of words that you want to see in the drop-down box. And then the cell link means where is the actual numeric switch. Very simple. And when you do that and you press OK, you end up with this little drop down. It shows you the words. If you click on base, it puts a number one in this switch. If you click on best, it inserts a 2. And if you click on worst, it puts a 3 into that cell. That's it. All I need to do now is move it and cover up my value so my client doesn't have to see it, but I've got this really nice, elegant feature that allows me to play with the model. By the way, if in our videos, in our foundations course videos, we walk through all of these steps a lot more slowly, but you can watch this video again or just take a look at it in the model because it's a very critical, important tool skill. So I really hope everyone starts building scenario pages in your models. Build your scenario page, have all your inputs, have a live case. I showed you a choose function, and have a switch. If you do this, again, people will love it and find it really flexible to use and play with your model. Okay, any questions on that before I move into the last few tips here? Right, we've got a few more things that I'm going to go through very, very quickly. Some last critical tips, and then we'll be done here for today. Okay, anything before I dive in here? Okay, so we've touched on and talked about the first 5. I'm going to move into the last 5. These ones are very, very quick to do. And I actually touched on number 6 already. Point number 6 is, this is just, again, remember earlier I said that there are 2 general styles. I told you that there are 2 general styles to build models. vertically and horizontally. Horizontally means there's lots and lots of sheets. Vertically means that a lot of things are stacked vertically. So this is a vertical model where you can see in my vertical model here, take a look, I've got my revenue forecast. Let me open up the historical columns for you. I've got revenues, make it smaller. Underneath revenues, I've got costs. This is vertical. Underneath cost is the income statement. And then underneath income statements, cash flow statement. This is more of a warning and a caution. My recommendation is, at least with your financial statements, I encourage you to, if possible, try to keep your financial statements built vertically. Does anyone know why I'm saying that? I mean, I touched on it a bit earlier. What's the rationale? What happens? What happens with all the financial statements for every company in the whole world? Does anyone want to go into the chat for 1 second? What do you know about the financial statements for every single company in the whole world? What can you tell me? They are what? They are integrated. Thank you, William. They are related, right, Michael? They talk to each other. They talk to each other. You all know that. Financial statements talk to each other. They're related. Thank you. So watch this. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. So does everyone see this? My income statement starts with revenue, like every income statement, and my income statement ends with net income, right? Sure. My income statement ends with net income. You all know that. What's the beginning of a cash flow statement? Well, every single cash flow statement that's sort of, we call this an indirect. Well, most cash flow statements are these indirect ones, start with net income. So where does it come from? Well, look at this. Look how simple that is. Look how simple it is to build and to link and to make sure it's perfect, to make sure it's correct. If it stays flowing, it just works its way. It flows like a waterfall down the page. I can see it. I can check it. It's easy. And this, look at this, my depreciation. Where does depreciation come from? Well, it's an add back right off the income statement. It flows, it's linear, it's vertical. It's very easy to make sure it works, and I'm not gonna make a mistake. If you're on different sheets, you can do that, but you need to be a little bit more careful, because I see a lot of models where people accidentally link to the wrong year. And then what does my cash flow statement end with? Well, the cash flow statement always ends with ending cash. I want to change something back here. I think I have a very big cost, which is why my numbers are so high. Yep, let me put that back. My cash flow statement always ends with ending cash. You know that all cash flow statements end with ending cash. Well, what's the first item on every balance sheet? Cash, right? And the cash line on a balance sheet is always just coming from the bottom of the cash flow statement. So the nice thing about staying linear and vertical is it flows. It's easier to make sure that your links are accurate and you're not making a mistake. Again, we don't have any problems. And a lot of people who sit the level 1 AFM exam at the FMI, they build their models on lots of tabs, and that's fine, no problem. But I would just say be careful. You got to be a little bit more careful when you have multiple sheets because it's easier to make a mistake. So that's tip number 6 is to say, try to build your financial statements vertically. I think it minimizes some errors. And if you're not, just be super, super careful. This tip though does, this is really, really important for all models, whether a model's vertical or horizontal. This tip number 7 and 8, I'm going to do together. It says, don't do any work on the financial statements. This is a very strong tip that I hope you can use in every model. The tip that I wanted to share with you says, don't do no big calcs. Let me go to the bottom here. I want to share with you my 2 modeling sayings. 2 of my favorite sayings are, one is build it and then link it. Let me tell you what I'm talking. Build it, then link it. What I mean by that is no major calcs on the financial statements. I never want to see huge formulas. I never want to see huge formulas on the income statement, cash flow statement, or balance sheet. You're almost guaranteed to find errors when you see huge. Look at my balance sheet, guys. Look at my balance sheet. My balance sheet, look, it's just a link. Cash is a link. Receivable is a link. It's a link. I'm not going to, by the way, remember I mentioned earlier, I'm in the process of releasing a video series free on my LinkedIn page on the top 10 reasons balance sheets don't balance. And one of the big reasons is because people build big formulas. So I'm going to kind of dissect it over 10 videos. But look, these are just links. These are just links. There's no giant formulas on my balance sheet. Or my cash flow statement, look, it's just links. There is no crazy work. Same thing with the income statement. There's no big formulas. Whenever someone is struggling with their model and they ask me to look at it, I'll usually notice big formulas right on the financial statements, which makes it really hard to get it working. So the tip says, don't do any work on the statements. Well, then where do you do your work? Well, the work should be built on schedules. That's where we do our work in a good model. So my revenue, look at my income statement, guys. My revenue, income statement starts with revenue. Okay, good. It's a link, but where is it linking to? Well, it's linking to straight above me in row K26. Let's go see it. What that's of course coming from is the bottom of a revenue schedule. So my strong recommendation is to build the financial statements. First, build your schedules. Build up a schedule, come down to a total. Let me go back to my revenue schedule. I've got my revenue forecast. I work my way down to gross revenue. And once I've built it, I will directly link it to my income statement. Absolutely critical. All types of models can benefit from this approach. I know that whenever people start building big calcs on the financial statements, they end up getting into trouble, and they end up with lots and lots of places where the formulas aren't working, or the balance sheet's not balanced and they can't figure out why. It's hard to audit in models when the formulas are directly on the statements. And that leads us then to the last two tips and this relates to what I talked about at the very beginning of the webinar. Keep it simple. Keep your formulas really simple so that someone can understand them. I just told you to build all your formulas and all your thinking on your schedules. But tip 9 says build really simple formulas. And I'm going to show you something in a moment. Really simple formulas. So let me show you what I mean by that. I want to see tiny, simple formulas all the way down. Let's look at my revenue schedule, please. On my revenue schedule, do you see this? I've got a section for pricing. This is the sales price of my product. I've got a section for volume. And then I've got the actual revenue. So I've got price, I've got volume, I've got the revenue. And then let's go into the price. How does price work? Well, I've got a gross selling price. Does everyone see this? I got a gross price. And what's that? That's just a link. That's just a link to one of my assumptions. Okay. That is actually on my scenario page. It's a simple link. I have cost inflation. Why do I have cost inflation? Well, because I was told that we have to deduct freight and warehousing charge. The seller, Henderson, has to pay for freight and warehousing. Okay, fine. So how do I calculate that? Look, it's the previous year grossed up by 1 plus the inflation. But look at how simple my formula is. Everything I need is right in front of me. And because I have my gross price and I have inflation, my freight, I can get to a net price. My net price is just gross minus freight. It's so simple. Every single cell, you're going to say, yep, that makes sense. Yep, that makes sense. Yep, that makes sense all the way down. Same thing with my sales volumes. And then look at my revenue. Once I know price and once I know volume, my revenue is just A times B, price times volume. Anyone looking will find this so elegant, so simple, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Build really simple formulas. And so let me write that down before I get into tip number 10. So my two major modeling sayings, number 1 are build it and link it. And then how do we do that? Well, we say repeat and link. That really important tip is to repeat all assumptions before using in calculations. And you just saw that. How do you make sure the model stays really effective and simple? Look, I needed to get to a net selling price. So what I did is I repeated the gross price. It's just a simple repeat. I repeated my inflation, very simple. I then calculated a simple freight number, and my net number is easy to follow, very simple, because I repeated all the key assumptions I needed. So important. So my last question for you is this. Has anyone ever seen a formula that looks like this? I'm going to build something really silly. I'm going to build something long and complex right now. Watch this. Have you ever seen a formula that looks like this? Or I'm going to grab, makes no sense. I'm going to grab a number on one sheet on my summary sheet. I'm going to divide this by a number on a second sheet here. I don't know why. I'm going to just pick some random number. This formula makes no sense. I'm just showing an example. I'm going to multiply it by something on this sheet, and then I'm going to add something on this sheet. This is goofy. It makes no sense, but whatever. Raise your hands. Has anybody ever looked at a formula in Excel and seen a calculation that looks something like this, where you've got a bunch of cells linking to a bunch of different sheets? Have you seen that? I'm sure you've never done that, right? But no, I know we've all done that at times, but you've seen formulas like this, right? Sure. Not optimal, not optimal. Why is this not optimal? Because I can't follow this. I don't understand. I don't understand what this means. So what do I recommend? Tip 10. How do I make sure you build a simple formula? Repeat, 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 repeat all your data, add rows, and then use it in a formula. So instead of seeing a formula that looks like this, which is very difficult to understand, what am I going to do instead? I'm going to add some rows. It makes it taller, but much, much cleaner. So I'm going to do this. I will simply take whatever was in this. I'll take the first value. Watch this. I'll take the first and I'll put it in its own cell like that. And I've labeled it. Now it's clear. It's just a straight up link. Okay, that's easy. I'll take the second one and I'll do the same thing. This is so easy, but really effective. And I will label that. I don't know, whatever, I'm making this up, whatever that is, I'll repeat that. And I will do the same thing with my third one here. And now I have repeated that. I think that was a percentage, whatever. And now watch. What if, and this is all labeled, label, and then a calc. Well, now instead of a calc that looks like this, I'm going to do this instead. And look, my number is 102. I'll say, okay, let's take this value, whatever that was, divide by this value, whatever that is. I'll multiply it by this and then add in that. And when I do that, I get exactly the same thing. But now what happens when I press edit, when I press F2? Look how clean it is. You can follow. Your boss understands. You can read it like it's telling you a story. And that will make all the difference. And so I wanted you to see that, guys. That gets me through the top tips. I know some of you have been experienced, done a lot of modeling and experienced modelers, and which is great. But I got to tell you, I have found even experienced modelers will often find that they can be better, that they can be cleaner, that they can communicate more clearly. And what I hope is that if you can think about some of these ideas that I shared here today in the top 10 tips, that you will be able to kind of take your models to the next level and make sure that they are extremely clear, extremely powerful, and tell a great story so that everyone you show it to has incredible confidence in you, in your skills, and in the ability of the model to get you to the right decision. So that gets us through what we need. If there's any questions, toss them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to invite Gary back in just a moment. Gary, you can come back anyway. But if anyone does, and still almost everyone is still here, which is amazing. A ton of people still here. So thank you guys for sticking around. Again, feel free to email me if you have any questions, or shoot me a note on LinkedIn, or follow me, whatever you like. If you want to stay in touch, always happy to do that. Does anyone, oh yeah, you wanted me to stop sharing. So I have, now you did, thank you. If anyone has any questions, sure. If not, Gary, I'll turn it back to you. You can email me as well, guys, if you have any questions. But Gary, I know you had a couple of things before we wrap up today.
Well, first of all, I want to just say thank you to you, Ian, for that. Really, it was a very packed presentation full of really good tips. And that's why I can't stress enough. If you really want to get into doing like a deep dive on financial modeling, stay tuned at the end of the program. We'll put up some information regarding FMI's Foundations program, as well as the course that we're offering next week in partnership with Marquee Group. Actually, Ian, I wanted to just real quickly, you kind of touched on how people get in touch with you. Just real quickly, just kind of a decision tree thing. Can you kind of differentiate when someone would want to go for the FMI certification versus just doing a dedicated financial modeling course? Can you give some guidance on that?
Sure, it's just a different need. I mean, courses are great. As I said, there's lots of training firms all over the world. And as you know, I'm involved in one, and there's nothing wrong that we train thousands of people. The only challenge is that it's hard to prove to someone that you actually have great modeling skills just by taking any course. It's like learning to play guitar. I can take a course in guitar. That doesn't mean I'm a good guitar player. I can take a course in golf. Doesn't mean I'm a good golfer. So by having a real accreditation behind your name, our level 1 accreditation, the AFM, first of all, that comes with learning materials that walks you through step-by-step how to build a model self-study. And then, if you can do that and pass an exam, that's proof. That means you're an excellent guitar player, an excellent golfer, etc. And so a lot of people sort of need that these days they find that in their roles that they need that. They need to be able to prove. And I think we're going to see over time, I mean, there's a continued growth and interest in people wanting to be able to validate and prove their skills. The FMI is the only organization of its type in the world. And so I think we're going to continue to see a lot of a lot of interest growing. Literally, we're seeing it all over the world. So that's how I would distinguish.
Excellent. Okay, great. So, in case people need to get in touch with Ian, you can go to FMA. It's fmiinstitute.org. And then Ian,
.com actually. I think it's
.com. Sorry, .com. You can also look up Ian on LinkedIn. And then, as always, let me put up our website here. So if you want to find out the upcoming events here at CFA Society Boston, just visit our website, cfaboston.org. Feel free to email me as well, gsarkissian@cfaboston.org, if you're wanting to get the slides for this presentation. And Ian, I know you said you will distribute them afterwards. What we could do is we could take those and post them on our member-only online community for anyone that has or hasn't attended. They'll be able to access the presentation.
I'll send them to you.
Perfect.
Right after.
Perfect.
Does that work?
Perfect. So we are right against time. So thanks for everyone for sticking around. Do stick around for just a couple of minutes or two. I'm just going to put up the information regarding the upcoming course and the FMI Modeling Foundations program. Ian, thank you so much to you for joining us. We wish you all the best. And to everyone as well, thank you for joining, and please be well and take